As you know, it's pretty rare for me to deem a high-salaried hitter or a high-salaried stack to be a priority for a slate in daily fantasy baseball because almost always I want to spend that salary on what's predictable, what's predictive, where I can find the most obvious and highest probability path to upside. And usually that's via pitchers. Today's slate, I think, is a little bit different because there are two stacks that I like a lot that are in tremendous spots and will cost you a pretty penny. And I think that they're attractive enough where I do want to prioritize them, even on a slate where Garrett Cole is pitching. So our job for today is to decide, do we go Cole or do we go with those high-salaried stacks? And if we do go with the high-salaried stacks, which pitchers do we utilize for tonight? Let's dive on in and get you set. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down today's 12-game main slate with locks set for 7:05 for tonight. There is one weather note for this slate. There is a chance of rain in Chicago for the Cubs and the Reds. Looks like it's rolling out before first pitch, but you'll want to check back on that one later on to make sure that game is good to go. Update on that one coming up later on today on the 4 p.m. stream. That is on 4 p.m. on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. We will still be doing the MLB Q&As, even with NFL season now here. We will be changing around the order of things eventually. Like on Thursday, we're going to have our Bucks-Cowboys preview. That'll be at 4 p.m. MLB DFS will be at 4:30. Friday, we're going to have our Snake Draft Q&A back with myself, JJ Zachariason, and Brandon Gadula. That'll be at 4. MLB will be at 4:30. But at least for the start of this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll still be on air 4 to 4:30 with the MLB Q&A. No PGA today because they are off this week after the Tour Championship last week, but we will still have MLB as always at 4 p.m. So make sure you subscribe there, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter, and also subscribe to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed because NFL is back this week. Our first preview podcast of the year coming up on Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. Recap podcast, 9 a.m. Monday on the FanDuel YouTube page. Solo shot will be at 8 a.m. on Monday. So changing things around a little bit here to account for NFL season, but still plenty of baseball coverage coming your way here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Hey, sports fans, FanDuel is offering an exclusive promotion for new sportsbook users. Join FanDuel Sportsbook today and make your first bet. If you lose, we'll give you a refund up to $1,000 in site credit within 72 hours. Your first bet after depositing will qualify. If you have multiple selections on one bet slip, it'll be the first selection you made. Head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today and make your first bet. Must be 21 plus and present in Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. New users only. Max bonus $1,000 site credit. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Colorado, 1-800-522-4700. In Iowa, 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WHIP-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Or in West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview for this Tuesday main slate. Garrett Cole is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel, checking in at $11,300. He is well worth that, but he's also facing the Blue Jays. That will factor into our discussion for today. Blake Snell on a heater is at 10-1. Logan Webb, despite being at Coors Field, is $9,700. Still makes sense given how good he has been. Max Fried is $9,300. Aaron Nola is $9,000. We have Wade Miley, James Kaprielian, Steven Matz, Eric Lauer, and Eduardo Rodriguez as the others at $8,000 or higher. And when I'm looking at this slate, I do want to get to Garrett Cole, and I will have some Cole tonight. But I don't think he needs to be the top pitcher, given the match with the Blue Jays, given the viability and desirability of the high-salaried stack. So to me, the number one pitcher is going to be Max Fried, and a lot of that's because of the situation he is in. He is at home and facing the Nationals, and they are a beaten-down shell of a team right now. They are better against lefties and righties, but I don't think they're a team we need to fear right now. And Fried is pitching really well. He is not quite in like the Zach Wheeler zone where he's like amazing in every department, but he's getting there where he's just super well-rounded. He's been using his curveball more over his past 13 starts. This is a very large sample for Fried. that has led to both good plate discipline numbers and good batted ball numbers. He has a 26% strikeout rate with a 5% walk rate in that time. His fly ball rate is just 27%, and he's not letting up a lot of hard contact. And Fried has put up those really impressive numbers in some tough matchups. He faced the Dodgers and the Giants in his past 2 starts, and he had 9 strikeouts in that Dodgers game. He also had 9 against the Mets at the end of July. So what that means is that Fried does have a path to upside, and his salary at $9,300 gives us more flexibility to load up on the high salaried bats that I really do want to prioritize for today. So no, I don't always pass up a high strikeout pitcher to save salary. In fact, I very rarely do that. I think in this spot, though, it's a pretty fair trade-off because Fried does have upside. He's got a really good floor too, and it is a difference-making salary at $9,300. So I'm okay, quote-unquote, settling for Fried here and using the savings on the high upside bats. So to me, I think that Max Fried grades out well enough where I am okay making him my number 1 pitcher for today. I think that Zach Gallen is the other guy who will let you load up on some high-salaried bats without totally sacrificing a path to his ceiling. He's down at $7,900. He's facing the Rangers, and that's a big part of it here, too. They have an 83 WRC plus against righties with a 146 ISO. The Rangers don't draw many walks, so they are a plus matchup, and now they lose a DH tonight with this game in Phoenix. The low walk rate that I mentioned before is a great thing for Gallen because he has been getting strikeouts recently. He has a 26% strikeout rate in his 8 starts where he's been using his fastball more often, but his walk rate is 9%. And that's an issue that Gallen has had in the past. It's hurt him at times in this stretch as well. So I don't expect the walk rate to just magically go down. We do want to go at Gallen more hard in situations where he's facing teams that don't draw a lot of walks. And the Rangers fit that very well. He's a more appealing pitcher in situations like this. In this 8-game stretch, Gallen had 9 strikeouts against the Rockies and Coors. He had 8 against the Dodgers at home. So he's been put in some tough spots, but he's still performed well. And this spot tonight is not as tough. He's at home, facing a rough offense, losing a DH. So he's not going to score as well as Cole, but he's going to get you a lot more juice out of your hitters. Like if you want to get to Mookie Betts and the highest desirable Giants for tonight, I do think that it's a situation where Gallen makes a lot of sense, and I think it is a trade-off I am okay making. So to me, Zach Gallen, despite being imperfect for a lot of reasons, is still a guy I would like to use for today. So if you are like me and you decide, I love the Giants, I love the Dodgers, want to get to both those teams, I would say Max Fried and Zach Gallen are your top 2 options. With that said, the Giants' salaries are not all that high. They've got a lot of mid-range guys. They got a value guy in there too. So you can potentially stack them specifically with Garrett Cole for tonight. The Dodgers might be tougher, but I think the Giants can work, and it might be a bit cumbersome, and you will need a viable second stack, but you can make this happen. So I am going to have Cole despite his $11,300 salary. Cole is my number 3 pitcher for tonight. He's in a tough matchup facing the Blue Jays, and that's another part of why I'm willing to go to Fried first over Garrett Cole for today. But Cole is filthy right now. He's been leaning more on his slider over his past 6 starts, which has helped him regain the dominance that he had earlier on this year. He has a 2.37 skill interactive ERA in that 6-start sample. He has a 40% strikeout rate with just a 6% walk rate. And he's also letting up hard contact just 29% of the time, which is the best mark on this slate. So if we're looking at like this from a performance perspective, not accounting for matchups, salary, et cetera, Garrett Cole is on his own planet right now. The matchup is tough. Luckily for us, we have seen Cole in some tough spots in this recent stretch. He has faced the Red Sox, the Rays, and the A's in this time, and he's had at least 8 strikeouts against all 3 of those teams. He did let up earned runs. Like that Rays game, despite getting like 10 strikeouts, is not a shining pinnacle of, showing why we should spend it for Garrett Cole tonight. That's why he's 3rd on this list, not 1st. But if you have double-digit strikeout upside, you deserve to be in our player pool, even if we do want to spend up at hitter. So I'll have less Cole tonight than I have of Fried and Gallen because, again, I do want to prioritize them first, but Cole will be number 3 for me, and I want to have enough to benefit if he blows up once again. So in terms of exposure for me tonight, it is Fried 1, Gallen 2, Cole 3. could maybe talk me into some other guys, but I think that I feel pretty good ranking those three at the top of my list for today. So that's the thought at pitcher. Let's talk about stacks. And it's been kind of the underlying thing throughout the day for today. And the reasoning why we did want to try to find some salary relief at pitcher is because the Giants and the Dodgers, to me, far and away the top two stacks. And I would like to get to a lot of both for today. Let's start with the Giants. They are at Coors Field, and that means that they go from having the worst park factor in baseball to having the best. It's also a very good matchup. They're facing Chichi Gonzalez. Gonzalez's velocity has been down for a while now, for about the past 2 months. And in those 7 outings, he has a 5.65 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 11% with a 6% walk rate. That means he's letting him play 82% of the time, and that's at Coors Field. We want to limit balls in play at Coors Field. Gonzalez is not doing that. He's doing the opposite. And 44% of those balls in play are hard hits. Only 39% are on the ground. That is going to lead to calamity, and it has. He has a 6.91 ERA in this stretch. That is even with 3 of the 7 appearances being on the road. Now, he's facing the Giants. They have a 108 WRC plus against righties. They have a 200 ISO. Even with so many of their games being in a really bad park for offense, they get extra base hits. I think that they are an elite level stack for tonight, and I will do what I have to be in on them here. And luckily for us, the salaries aren't that bad. You know, it's not to the point where, like, you can easily stack them with Cole, but, like, you can make it happen. They've got Brandon Belt, Buster Posey, Brandon Crawford, all at $3,300. We can get there with Cole. Tommy La Stella is $2,700. He actually hit leadoff against a righty a couple days ago. He has a 36% fly ball rate against righties, so I'm very willing to use La Stella, and I think that he is the best value play on this slate. So although I'm putting Cole third on my list, I would not assume you can't stack Cole with the Giants. I think you can. So I'd at least give it a shot for today because I think you can make it work, and it won't be that difficult, but it does mean you're going to have to go a little bit salary conscious with your second stack. Part of the reason why I put Cole third as opposed to first, despite the Giants' middling salaries, is because I want to spend it for the Dodgers in my second stack as well. So I do think that they grade out really well here. It may be tough, but it is worth it for sure. They're facing J Happ. Happ is still having issues. He faced Cincinnati last week, and they are a team that's pretty rough against lefties, despite some talented individual batters, and they beat him up. They scored 7 runs against him in just 1 inning. He allowed 2 home runs in that time with no strikeouts. And we've seen Happ have other blowups in this stretch. The good performances he has had have mostly just come against Pittsburgh. Like, he's faced them 3 times in this stretch, and he's dominated them. But the Dodgers aren't Pittsburgh. They have a 108 WRC plus against lefties. They have a 196 ISO, a 38% fly ball rate. So it's a tough matchup for Happ, who has slipped up in lesser spots. And I think the Dodgers are great. If the Giants weren't in as good of a spot as they are, I think they would be a no-brainer for the top spot tonight. The Dodgers would be, that is. If the Giants weren't as good as they are, the Dodgers would be our top stack for today. They'd be the top stack on most slates, but I'm okay putting them second. And again, prioritizing them on this slate, despite the fact they are very high salaried. As far as the Dodgers individual batters go, a lot of their guys are good against lefties and righties. You know, whether they have a lot of lefties who can hit lefties well. The guy, to me, who gets the biggest bump up against the lefty is Chris Taylor. His ISO against lefties is 245. It is 169 against righties. He's still able to get some stolen bases off of lefties too, which is a nice talent to have. So I don't use Taylor much against righties. It tends to be a bit oversalaried for me there, but it's a different discussion against lefties. I will be in on him here at $3,400. I think that he's tremendous. Will Smith at the same salary is tremendous. He should play today because he was off yesterday. So I do think that Taylor and Smith, mid-range plays in the Dodgers, who can grade out well. And you could go with the strategy of peppering the mid-range Dodgers and passing up the Giants in a Cole situation and then going with a lower salaried second stack. But to me, if I'm getting just one of these 2 teams with Cole, I'd rather go with the Giants over the Dodgers. Now, as mentioned, when we're trying to get to Cole with the Giants or with the Dodgers, we need a lower salaried second stack to make it work. I think the Orioles work for that spot. They're facing Jackson Kowar. Kowar just came back up last week for his first start since June, and he did pitch really well. He held Cleveland to 2 runs over 6 innings, and he had 6 strikeouts. That was much better than he was previously. There were still some issues, though. primarily Kowar let up a lot of hard contact. 8 of the 15 balls in play he allowed were hard hits, and not many of those were on the ground either. We also saw Kowar let up some runs when he was in the minors before he got called back up. Like, he was getting strikeouts, but he was letting up earned runs. So because of the strikeouts, the Orioles are not in a slam dunk spot, but they're also not a bad offense. Their WRC plus against righties is up to 98. They have a 39% fly ball rate. They have a 170 ISO, and they're in a good park as well. Kowar's not bad. It's possible he figured some things out while he was in the minors, and there is some potential there. But there were still some flaws last week, though, when he had that really good game. So I think we have the leeway to stack against Kowar here, and I will be doing so for tonight. One of the guys who will work well with the strategy of trying to use the Orioles to get salary flexibility is DJ Stewart if he plays. They've faced a ton of lefties recently, so Stewart hasn't played all that much, but he does tend to play versus righties. And the lack of playing time has pushed Stewart's salary down to $2,500. But he has a 207 ISO against righties. He has a 51% fly ball rate. And in this park, that is double dong upside. And that gives you a lot of flexibility. So I want to be high on Stewart here, assuming he does play. I think that he makes a lot of sense at $2,500. And I will be in there for tonight. He's not like the best hitter all around, but he can go deep. And I think that that is pretty attractive on a slate where he's $2,500, and I do need those salary savings for sure out of my hitters. Let's talk about some more potential one-offs and stacks in things to watch. The Royals could get us some value in that exact same game. They're facing Alex Wells. Wells has let up a 54% hard hit rate this year with just a 16% strikeout rate. That is a tremendous combo to stack against. I'm not expecting to have a bunch of salary left over for one-offs, so, it's tough to say jam in Salvador Perez and Adalberto Mondesi, but, if you do have that salary, those guys are amazing. I love them. Otherwise, Edward Olivares could hit cleanup for a minimum salary once again. So, Olivares, a salary saver here on the Royals. Perez, Mondesi, great one-offs if you can get there. And you could just go with a Perez, Mondesi, Olivares stack. Not opposed to that by any means. I think that does grade out pretty well. But overall, the Royals another spot to go to for tonight. Two other offenses I like for one-offs or potentially stacks are the A's and the Reds. The Reds are facing Adrian Sampson. Sampson is getting stretched out as a longer option for the Cubs, and things haven't necessarily gone great from a peripherals perspective in the shorter role. His results are good, but the peripherals are not quite as good. Tyler Naquin, $2,900. He could be a fun one-off as well. So Naquin in there, Olivares, and I think those are the primary lower salary guys here. As for the A's, they're facing Jimmy Lambert. Lambert has spent most of the year in AAA, and he got a lot of strikeouts, 32% strikeout rates, but he still had a 4.98 ERA because he was walking way too many guys. The strikeouts have not been there for Lambert in a small sample in the majors. He's let up a lot of fly balls. I'm not as high on this A's stack because of the park in which it's taking place, but I can still get to some because the matchup is pretty good and the offense solid, despite the fact they have petered off a bit recently. So for one-offs, the Royals, the Reds, and the A's, but I'm ranking them behind the Giants, Dodgers, and Orioles for tonight. Let's finish up here with some dinger calls going back to the teams we discussed in the stacking section. The boring home run call is Brandon Belt. Brandon Belt has amazing power. He is usually mired in a terrible park, but now goes to Coors Field. Facing a righty, lets up a lot of balls in play. Brandon Belt, to me, just way too obvious as a home run call for tonight. The boring one, let's talk about DJ Stewart. Again, 51% fly ball rate versus righties in a great park for hitting. Facing a guy who will probably let up some hard contact in the majors. I think that's enough where we can like him quite a bit. So the home run calls for today, Brandon Belt and DJ Stewart. That's all we got for today here on the Solo Shot, but we are back Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Still a full week of the Solo Shot coming your way here on the FanDuel YouTube page at 9 a.m. and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. So make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page and also subscribe to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. If you've got questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Hope you all had a fantastic Labor Day weekend. It's NFL season. Going to be a fun week. We'll talk to you all once again in the very near future. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.